listening to Who's Tom and Dick, a weekly podcast with your hosts, Martin Weavers, fighting stage 4 lung cancer, and Patrick Mortimer, living with heart disease. Why not grab yourself a cup of coffee, sit back, and enjoy the chatter as we discuss and share information, talking about tough subjects, and offering help, support, and motivation with a positive mental attitude.
Good morning and welcome to Who's Tom and Dick on this lovely Friday morning. The sun is shining and I'm joined again by my old mate Martin. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing really good. Yeah, I'm on top of the world at the moment, but
Brilliant.
all this will be revealed in the next episode.
Yes, we'll have an update on health.
And by telling everybody that I'm really pleased, they might guess already what I'm going to tell them.
Well, I'm sure you'll go into intricate detail, as you always do. Update everybody, which is good. So,
that's right, and we've got other things to talk about as well. So, but before we do that, today we've got a fellow podcaster.
Yes, and I'm glad you're doing the introduction today because it's a bit of a tongue twister, this one.
Well, I thought I might be, and also another one we've got. I was doing some research for it. We might have to do that when we do the DNA because I'm going to tell everybody what DNA stands for. You'll never get that one. So yes, today this gentleman called Tom, and he runs a podcast called Tom's Hirschsprung podcast, and it's very popular. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Tom.
Good morning, Tom. And
good morning, Tom.
Good morning. Yeah, really good. The guys, thanks so much for having me on.
You run your own podcast. We've mentioned that in the intro and all that. But can you give us a little bit of details about your background before we start all talking about the Hirschsprungs?
Yes, yeah. Well done for saying it correctly, though. It's a difficult one. I've seen you've been practicing. But yeah, so background-wise, I was a PE teacher for about a decade or so. Worked in first-class cricket, so worked a little bit for Essex for about 10 years or so, doing some academy stuff. Then decided sort of late 2021, wanted to do something more on the development side. Realised I could do that from home. So now I run a cricket development business from home. So work with people all over the world, creating development plans. Unfortunately, there are a few customers in other parts of the world, so it does mean sort of 4 a.m. meetings sometimes, but I try and avoid that if I possibly can.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, so that's what I do sort of on a day-to-day basis, which then leads me to being able to do the podcast.
And it's nice working from home.
Yeah, I mean, it has its benefits and it has its drawbacks. I mean, you don't get to see as much of the world as I used to, but it is nice. You can sort of fit hours around as and when you want to, I guess.
Yeah, let's give the listeners a little bit of a background to what you do and all that. So, but what we're actually here for is to talk about the Hirschsprung. So, can you just give us a little bit about what it is and that you've got it and all your podcasts and what you do with it?
Yeah, so it is a rare disease. Obviously, not a lot of people will have known about it. Even there's a lot of GPs I've spoken to throughout my life who have to look it up or think, right, what is that? It affects around 1 in 5,000 people. That's the general accepted number around the world. Obviously, it could be I've known people who they have it, their parents have it, their children have it. So obviously the numbers are going to be a little bit less there. But the general accepted figure is 1 in 5,000. So I kind of think of it as 1 in every small town. I mean, I live in Cornard in South Suffolk, and there's going to be around sort of about 5,000 people, give or take, in there. So I'm probably the one. But yeah, 1 in every small town, I'd say. It has 5 different types, ranging from sort of a ultra short segment, and I'll go through that in a second, but ultra short segment to sort of total colonic. So it is a bowel disease, bowel condition, where the ganglion cells that are in the large intestine, so the ganglion cells basically move all your food along and everything, they are missing in some sections. So you'll have people who have total colonic who've got all the ganglion cells missing, sort of long segment where you've got 2/3 missing. I've got something called short segment, where I've got less than a third missing. And then you've got ultra short segment, where you've got sort of very, very little bit missing. Usually this is diagnosed at birth, although I've met people who have been diagnosed a lot later. I was diagnosed after about 3 weeks, which is a little bit late. It's usually within the first 48 hours. But I was diagnosed with short segment, and what they do then is they do what's called a pull-through operation. So the sort of simpler way of saying that would be to take the disease part out, so the bit that doesn't work, cut it out, and then sort of stick the two good ends working together. Occasionally, like I was, you are fitted with a stoma, as I was. So I had my stoma and then had that reversed. But yeah, that's kind of a brief outline of what Hirschsprung's is.
And you got this from 3 weeks, you say?
Yeah, it was about 3 weeks. So usually it would be diagnosed a little bit earlier. And the telltale signs are when a baby's born, they pass what's called meconium, which is kind of sort of like sticky poo as such. If they don't pass the meconium, that's a kind of a telltale sign. They also sort of throw up bile as well. So they'll be sick, but it'll be greeny in color. But I didn't have any of those signs. So to everybody, I was sort of a normal, happy, healthy child. In terms of it being genetic, there's not enough testing at the moment. But as I said, I've known people who've had it, their children have had it, their parents have had it. For me, there is no genetic Hirschsprungs at all anywhere in my family, mum's side, dad's side. Nobody has this condition in my family, as far as I know. So it was always a bit of a mystery as to why I ended up getting it, and still have absolutely no idea why I have it. But yeah, so I was diagnosed after around 3 weeks. It was my mum tells this story that it was an Easter Monday, and the GP was very reluctant to come out. I'd sort of stopped feeding. I was very lethargic because obviously I hadn't been feeding because everything hadn't been getting through. And the GP was very reluctant to come out, but eventually he put it down to being an anxious mother, which again is something I hear a lot about doctors and going, oh, you're just anxious, you're just worried, you're just this, that, the other. So I sort of started to become quite drowsy. My condition started to deteriorate quite rapidly. And I was taken to Addenbrooke's Hospital, my local hospital. And then they said that I needed to go to... I was taken to the West Suffolk Hospital. Then they said I needed to go to Addenbrooke's, which was the larger regional hospital, because I needed more specialist treatment. At Addenbrooke's, my Hirschsprung's was diagnosed, which I think I was very fortunate with, because I'd see a lot of people who get misdiagnosed with a lot of different things. So I was very fortunate it was Hirschsprung's, and then I had an emergency colostomy operation that was performed there. But unfortunately, my condition was still deteriorating. So I developed sepsis, which is not usual when you have Hirschsprung's. And obviously that was affecting my bloodstream. And then that led to something called tachycardia, where the heart is beating at over 100 times a minute. So I was effectively at sort of about 3 and a bit weeks old, I was having a heart attack, effectively.
Wow.
Which is, not good. Not good. So that was where they were obviously incredibly concerned. I was placed on life support at that stage and was very much told, chance of recovery. I've never wanted to know a percentage, and I don't think they ever tell my parents the percentage, but it was low. It was pretty low and pretty desperate at that time, because they said, not only does he have sort of the sepsis, but it's severe tachycardia as well, where it's just the heart will not stop racing, and the body was sort of going into cardiac arrest at that point. Now, the good news, which is why I will always and forever praise junior doctors, is that my life was saved by a junior doctor. Now, this is 1992, so we're going back 30 odd years. But there was a new piece of research that had just come out that this junior doctor said, right, we're kind of out of ideas here. I'm going to try this, So he spoke to the lead surgeon and said, look, I've read a piece of research that said if you've got tachycardia, if you stick some magnesium and sort of syringe of magnesium into the body, it slows the heart rate down. The surgeon wasn't totally convinced because obviously he's the big surgeon and this guy's just a junior doctor. What do you know? But he said, look, we'll just try. At this point, you could just try anything. If they'd done nothing, the worst would have happened. So let's just try anything. They gave me a shot of magnesium sulfate through an IV line. It did reduce the tachycardia, and now this is sort of more well known across the world. So if this was happening nowadays, people would know instantly, which is really good. So thankfully, I was quite glad to be part of that sort of guinea pig testing research, because there was a little bit of evidence at the time, but not a huge amount. So I was very, very glad to be part of that, and obviously glad to make sure that my heart rate came down. But what they did is they administered it sort of late at night, and then kind of said to my parents, look, we don't expect him to see in the morning. And they were as shocked as anybody to see me awake and alive in the morning. So obviously the magnesium had worked. And then from there, I was then allowed to have my pull-through operation, which we spoke about before. Yeah. And that was done at 9 months. So it's usually probably done a little bit sooner than that. And that was done at Great Ormond Street Hospital, where I was sort of back and forth for the first 16 years of my life, every sort of 6 weeks. And then it became every sort of 3 months or so. So I was always having time off school, which was a little bit frustrating, but I had to go to London. So you can't go to London then come back to school because it'd just be pointless. So But so I was back and forth to Great Ormond Street quite often. So I've had 10 operations in total. Many of them I can't remember. I think it was about 7 or so. I can't remember. They were done before the age of 3. The 3 that I do remember there was one at 9 years old, where I had an Ace Malone stoma on the lower right hand side of my body. That was at 9, and then I had that reversed, which was my last operation, at 23, just because it was just causing problems and I didn't really need it anymore. But to date, that has been the last operation I've had. So that's just a sort of quick whistle-stop tour across my life.
Being at school with stoma, was there the ridicule and all things like that, or was it well hidden?
It was well hidden. I was generally saved from that, which I was thankful. But I had to do what's called bowel washouts. So you kind of put the catheter through the stoma, and I had to start this at 9 years old. Did them until I was 15. But you put the catheter through the stoma, and then there's 4 syringes that go through the catheter. There's saline, and then there's a few others. And I did these once a week, just to sort of help my bowel as it was at that time. And again, I kind of look back at it now and think, because I didn't really put up too much of a fuss or issue with that at the time. And I think I'm quite glad that I did, because I guess probably at that age, I could have been really, really against it. But I just sort of knew that I had to, because I had to stay well and I had to stay healthy.
Yeah.
I think one thing that really did help me at the time was that I played every sport under the sun. I played a decent level of football, a decent level of cricket, and any school team that needed anybody for hockey, tennis, anything, I was there. So I think staying fit, staying healthy really helped my stomach Whereas if I'd been somebody who sort of sat on a PlayStation for 6 or 7 years or whatever, I think I might have developed a few more issues. But I was very, very grateful to my parents for, you know, getting me into sport, because all of my brothers, I have 3 brothers, and they were all into sport as well. So every Sunday was football. Every summer we'd play, you know, in cricket matches every other day. So I am very, very grateful to them.
I think keeping active like that, the doctor said the same to me with my diagnosis. He said if you wasn't as fit, he said we couldn't give you the treatment we're giving you. So I think that goes out to everybody really, that fitness is quite a big thing if you do get a disease of any kind.
Yeah.
You were born with this. Is this something that starts at birth, or can it develop later?
See, that's an interesting one because nobody knows. Usually you're born with this, but I spoke to somebody who was diagnosed at 19, which seems awfully late to have sort of that amount of digestive issues and be diagnosed with something that late.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually within the first 48 hours, you're diagnosed, and then depending on the severity, they might give you a colostomy, like I had, and then you might have to do sort of bowel washouts, and then usually have a stoma reversal if you've got short segment like mine, and then you kind of on your way. But it can, having done, I think, what am I up to now? 64 episodes. I've seen so many different types of Hirschsprungs and different ways and different strategies and different all sorts, that it's really difficult to pin down even the 5 different types, to pin down this will happen, and that will happen. So yeah, but it is, yeah, usually within the first sort of 48 hours or so.
I noticed on your podcast you have more women than men. Is this more common in women than it is men, or is it just that men don't want to come on?
It's actually the other way around. It is 3 in every 4 diagnoses are men.
Right.
Yeah. So it's more diagnosed in men than women. But what I think has probably happened there, and I spoke to somebody else about it whilst she was on my podcast, I think women are more comfortable talking about like their sons. I think I've had a lot of women, or a lot of mothers come on,
Yeah.
who talk about their sons, who talk about their daughters. Whereas I think I've only had, I don't know off the top of my head, but only a few men who've come on and kind of want to talk about it, which is fantastic. I mean, I'd love to have obviously as many people as possible, but yeah, I found that women are a lot more comfortable.
And I noticed you get a lot of people of yours are from America as well, aren't they?
Yeah, all over the world now. I mean, I'm an ambassador for a charity in America and Canada called Reach HD. So it's the largest Hirschsprung's charity in the world. And so I tend to, people to kind of see that and then gravitate towards me, I guess, from there. And I've had 3 people from the charity, because I've got 6 board members. I've had the co-founder on. Her episode hasn't released yet as we speak. I've had Liz Crawford on, who's the head of the Canada division, and Nicole Perry, who's also on the board. I had Nicole on and had her son on as well, which was a really interesting take, because her son is about 9, that he really wanted to come on, and he spoke so well about his condition for 9 years old. I was absolutely amazed, because there's no way at all I could have done that. Hats off to him, because that was really, really good.
Yeah.
How is this disease treated long term?
So usually it would be sort of the bowel washouts. So you either have an Ace Malone stoma like mine, and sort of treat it like that, just to sort of flush everything along so that you don't get any blockages. Some people have a permanent stoma. Some people have sort of an Ace Malone that's ended up being temporary for me. The kind of issue I had really with the Ace Malone is it just ended up leaking too much. And obviously living quite an active lifestyle, and especially playing cricket where you wear whites wasn't so good. So a lot of that, so that's why I sort of had my reversal. But I guess people have them for different reasons. One thing that I haven't come across that I had that nobody else did. So I had the ace malone, then I had sort of a barrier over the top called a tegaderm. Have you guys heard of tegaderms?
No.
No. You're not alone with that. I don't think anybody has. I'm fast thinking that I was the only person in the world who had this, because nobody else seems to have heard of it.
Right.
But if I was to explain it, it's kind of if you've ever had a tattoo, and as soon as they've done the tattoo, they wrap it in sort of like a cling filmy type, covering.
Film.
Yeah. And so I had that in sort of that kind of film. You put that over the tegaderm, put that over the stoma, sorry. And yeah, it was supposed to stop leaking, but it didn't really do its job so well.
With this disease then, obviously you have to live with this. Do you have to have a special diet? Is there anything you can or can't have?
No, and I'm very grateful that I am, as far as everyone looks at me, I am an entirely normal person.
That's what Martin always says.
Not about you.
If you were to see me out and about, and there are people who've known me for decades who don't know about this condition, who know nothing about me having this condition. So if you were to see me out and about, I look an entirely, totally normal person. I guess the only way that you would know is if you saw my stomach, which is, there's got to be sort of 10, 12 scars there of varying lengths and sizes. There's sort of a main one, which I call a train track, because it looks exactly like one, which kind of goes from the middle and it goes right from one side to the other. And that's generally what you have if you have the pull-through operation, which all people who have Hirschsprungs have the pull-through operation. But you will end up with, effectively a train track. But yeah, there's multiple scars, and obviously where the stomas, because I had 2 stoma reversals, so you have the scar on there as well but that's only a very short scar. But there's no dietary requirements. I can eat chili, I can eat spicy stuff, I can eat, because that's the other thing. And people say, well, do you have to avoid spicy foods? Do you have to avoid, hot foods or exotic food or anything? And for me, no. There have been times where I've been told to avoid certain things. I think orange juice was something when I was a lot younger, and any kind of acidity. But as I've got older, everything's kind of been normal. I can eat and drink what I want, really.
Yeah.
Are you likely to need any other operations, or is that only if you come across any problems, or are you operation free now?
I am, touch wood, operation free, and have been since 23. So 2015 was my last one. But touch wood, that is the last operation, especially for Hirschsprungs. So yeah, so I'll stay at a nice round 10. I think that's a good number to stop.
That sounds good to me. What about medication? Do you take any medication?
No. Again, I mean, I've had all manner of medications, and used to have, when I was sort of 5, 6, used to have enemas and things like that to help, but then stopped the enemas and then went to the washouts, and the washouts till I was 15. But since 15, I haven't needed any medication at all, which has been really, really helpful. I've just been able to, I think I just try and do all the normal things, I guess, try and stay healthy, try and eat healthily, try and all of this stuff. Yeah, so I don't need any medication, don't need any other operation. So hopefully, again, touch wood, I am as normal as possible. But again, when this is sort of completely individual in the fact that when I speak to other people, there are other people on medication. There are other people who have to really watch what they eat. Even some who still do the washouts. So yeah, but as I've got older, I've tended to find that I'm, as normal as can be, I guess.
That's good. That's good. I noticed that when I was doing the research, because we do actually, believe it or not, research this program. A lot of people don't believe it.
We have a team of researchers back in the back office, don't we?
We do, Patrick. We do in our dreams. But I noticed it wasn't sort of documented until 1950. This disease. So what made me wonder was what people were calling this before then. I mean, there's all kinds of bowel conditions that people can get, but 1950 seems quite late to be calling it Hirschsprungs. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it was 1830 when Harold Hirschsprung first sort of came across it. But yeah, I think I'd probably have to do more history and research into that.
Answers my question, because I was going to say, how did they name it? Hirschsprung's disease?
Yes.
Whoa, Patrick.
Yes.
I can't understand why all these doctors that discover these illnesses have such terrible surnames.
Why couldn't he call it Harold or something?
Exactly.
Harold's a lot easier
Smith
than
disease, or
yeah.
but,
Harold Hirschsprung, in 1830, came across this first. And actually, since doing the podcast, I've learned how to spell it, because for the first 30 years of my life, I thought it had a B in it. So I was spelling it with a B in the middle, and then realised it was actually not a B, it was an S.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was so 1830 he came across it first. But I'd never known anybody else in my life with this condition, apart from one person who I'd come across somebody else, one other person with this. But that's where I sort of thought of starting the podcast, really, because I didn't think, I just set up my Instagram with the Hirschsprungs podcast and the logo, and thought, well, I'll see if anybody's about, and maybe if I can get, once every 2 weeks was my aim, really. I thought, if I can get one every 2 weeks and roll it out like that, then 24 episodes a year, that'll be fine. But I've been astonished, absolutely astonished at not just the amount of people I've found, but their stories and what they do for a living and their personalities. And I've just found some really, really great people. And I'm just, I'm so thankful that I started it, really.
So you're just over a year on that, aren't you? How many episodes was it?
Yeah, so 58 went out. There's 59 this week.
Yeah.
Going out this week. 64 have been recorded. But they're not all Hirschsprungs. I calculated it yesterday, it's about 70% are Hirschsprungs, but they're getting more and more each time. But I've been able to find just so many people who've been just so generous with their time and been able to tell such wide and varied stories. The way this sort of came about is because my brother has a podcast. So he has a podcast about diabetes, type 1 diabetes to be specific. And there's 3 of them that run it. And I looked at it and I saw that they were doing well. They were getting sponsorships. They run a cycling team. They had something at the XL that they did. And I thought, actually, I wonder if I can do that. I mean, having no experience, no idea, no anything about anything. But I thought, I'll give it a go. But I did. So I didn't have Instagram at the time. So I just set up the account, just started typing in Hirschsprungs, see who I can find. And I was just amazed at the amount of people that I found. And then obviously, as you find more people come to you. I had a couple of messages, one from Louisa and one from Carla. Louisa's lives in Wales. Carla is a doctor in Argentina, Hirschsprung specialist in Argentina. And they came to me sort of before I'd started doing interviews and said, can we come aboard? Can we help with this? And I was like, yes, absolutely. I need all the help I can get. So they've been with me from the start. We have like a WhatsApp group and everything. And they're sort of part of my team, if you will. Louise has been on a couple of interviews, and Carla has as well. And I thought, well, at least if I have them, then that's 2 weeks done, and then I can sort of try and find people from there. But it really been amazing. It's quite nice at this point because it's starting to come into its own a little bit more. I'm getting messages from people. So over Christmas, like when people have got time on their hands, to listen to podcasts or whatever. I had several messages from people saying, "Can I come on? Can I come and tell my story?" Which is amazing, that because usually I'm the one doing the chasing. I'm the one sort of cold DMing people saying, "Oh, hi, I'm this guy. I have a podcast about this rare disease. Do you want to come on?" But it's been amazing to have people come to me and say, "We'd like to come on."
One of Martin's tasks he normally does when we have a guest on with a unusual disease or illness is he does a search to see if there's any celebrities that's got this illness. Did you do this search?
I haven't this time, actually, no. But
All right.
Tom did mention about
We'll ask
celebrity.
Tom. Do you know, Tom, is there any celebrities with this illness or disease?
Yeah, so I'm always looking for celebrities for this. I have managed to interview a couple. The first person I interviewed was a great guy, actor. He's currently just finished, I think, doing Stranger Things in theatre. He's a great guy called Louis Healy. For those who are unfamiliar with that name, they might know his mum, who is Denise Welch.
And Tim Healy, yeah.
Yes, and his dad, Tim Healy, and his brother, Matty Healy, who's the lead singer of the 1975. So, so quite a famous family. And I just sort of found out who his agent was, messaged his agent. The whole interview with him took about sort of 4 months to get going, because as you guys probably know, you talk to agents. If you're a nobody like me, they don't talk to you back until you just sort of keep going. So yeah, this whole thing took sort of about 4 months, but it was probably, there's only been a couple of times I've been really nervous doing an interview. And that was one of them, because I'm just there thinking I've not done anything like this before, but it just totally normal. It was just like having a chat. It was I really, really enjoyed it. And he gave, over an hour of his time, and I thought, and he went really in depth with his story, and we talked about his story, we talked about acting, because one of the things that I wanted to do with the podcast was to show people that, yes, you might be going through this condition now, or you might be a parent of a child that's going through a lot of hospital appointments like I went through, but there's so many things that you can go and do. You can go and play sports like I did. You can go and be an actor. You can go and be a doctor. You can go and do whatever you want. It shouldn't. Yes, there'll be bumps along the way. We're not saying there won't be, but I want to show that people can go and be what they want to be. And Louis is the embodiment of that, really, because he went through a lot of issues as a child, back and forth to Alder Hey Hospital, but he is now an actor. He's doing incredibly well. He's doing magazine covers. He's doing all sorts of stuff. So that was excellent.
So, Tom, can you tell us, obviously, the name of your podcast and where people can listen to you on?
Yes, so it's called Tom's Hirschsprung's podcast, HIRSCHSPRUNGS. You can find me on Instagram at Toms_Hirschsprungs_podcast, because I did make a Tom's Hirschsprungs podcast Instagram, and then I forgot the password, so I then had to make another one. So there is another Tom's Hirschsprungs podcast out there. Nobody runs it, because I don't know what the password is. So you can find it there, or Tom's Hirschsprungs podcast on Facebook. You can find it on all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Spreaker, wherever you get your podcasts, really. They come out every Thursday at 6 a.m. UK time. So I always put an advert out on the Monday morning, and then put the podcast out every Thursday, 6 a.m.
Well, Tom, you've been fantastic, and you've told us a lot about Hirschsprungs that I didn't even know, and I didn't even know the name of it till I met you. Thanks very much for letting our listeners into everything that happens with you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tom, for that. That's enlightening, really. I like Martin, I'd never heard of the illness, but I mean, there's hundreds of illnesses about we never heard of, I guess. But it's certainly important to bring these to the forefront of people's minds, because there must be people suffering out there with this disease and don't know they've got it, by the sound of things. Irritable bowel syndrome is one that a lot of doctors seem to immediately diagnose with digestion.
And diverticulitis as well as another one they say.
They do. I mean, are they getting this confused, do you think? I mean, could you get to our age with it and not know it?
Be difficult to, I think. I mean, I have had people with IBS and IBD, ulcerative colitis. I've had lots of people on the podcast with that as well, and it does present similar symptoms. But Hirschsprung's is quite unique in the fact that the ganglion cells don't work.
Right.
So you probably will notice at some point. But again, I've had people who haven't been or have been misdiagnosed or haven't been diagnosed properly and have gone through some really horrible stuff, but not actually had that proper diagnosis.
So how would this be diagnosed in an adult today? You had was it a 19-year-old or?
Yeah, I found that a bit bizarre. That the fact they had it, but then they were diagnosed at 19. I guess if you have something like ultra short segment, then only a little bit of it will be diseased. So you can sort of miss it, I guess, that way. And people have been misdiagnosed before. I had somebody on whose child wasn't diagnosed till 2.5, but they were presenting all of the symptoms of Hirschsprung's, but just the hospital, for whatever reason, refused to diagnose it. This person actually ended up suing the hospital, and suing the NHS because they were misdiagnosed so badly. But so it is usually diagnosed in babies, but incredibly rare to not be or to be missed, because you've got to have missed it a lot for it to not be. I mean, you've got to be, dare I use the word incompetent, but you've got to have missed it a lot to misdiagnosed by that far out.
So would this be detrimental to somebody who was diagnosed late? Could it cause other problems?
I guess so, yes. I mean, your stomach will probably swell quite a lot because it's going to be quite full, and you'd see a lot more of the physical signs. I mean, you'd know something was completely wrong. I haven't heard anybody being sort of diagnosed. I'd one obviously at 19, but haven't seen anybody or heard anybody diagnosed anywhere near that number or later than that. You would be diagnosed. You would be diagnosed as a baby.
Yeah, you couldn't live with the symptoms, basically.
Yeah, you would know something is horribly, horribly wrong. And yeah, you'd get to 80, or you'd probably suffer worse consequences.
Well, Tom, thank you very much.
Yes, Tom, thanks for joining us this morning. That's been great. Very kind of you.
Fantastic.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Well, that was very interesting, Patrick. I think we both learned something new.
Yes, that was very good. Very good indeed.
We've learned a new word. Hirschsprung's.
Hirschsprungs. Hirschsprungs.
That's it. You got it, Pat. Now
That's because I've heard it so many times now that I think I can commit that one to memory.
That's right.
That's a disease I've never heard of, so that's quite enlightening, really. You just don't know what's around, do you?
Well, like you said, there's lots out there. And we're on the tip of the iceberg, really, with what we do. But
and if anybody's listening and they've got something that you think would be interesting, please drop us a line. We'd love to interview you too.
Yeah, you can get on our things, whatever they're on, and there's a little message bar at the side. You can message us, can't they, Patrick?
Get on the things that, whatever they are, we're on.
Facebook, our website, all the things we're on.
You're a mind of information, Martin.
I know.
So that's it for this week.
It is. Thanks very much for listening, everybody.
Thank you very much again, and we'll be back bright-eyed and bushy-tailed next week.
Yeah, I'll see you next week, Pat.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Who's Tom and Dick podcast with your hosts, Martin Weavers and Patrick Mortimer. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite streaming platform. New episodes are available every Friday. Thanks for tuning in.